The United States Agency for International Development, or USAID, finds itself at a crossroads. Recent decisions by the Trump administration have dramatically reshaped the agency. These changes involve significant staff reductions and have far-reaching implications. On February 23, 2025, the administration announced plans to eliminate 2,000 USAID positions. This move sent shockwaves through the agency and the broader development community. Adding to the disruption, nearly all 4,700 full-time employees were placed on paid administrative leave. This strategic move, termed a reduction in force, aims to curb government spending. However, critics argue that it undermines USAID's vital role in global development and humanitarian assistance. The impact is undeniable, with programs across the globe facing significant disruption. The administration maintains that this is a necessary step to streamline government operations. They argue that it allows for a more focused approach to foreign aid. The administration also points to the need to prioritize domestic issues. However, opponents counter that the cuts will ultimately harm American interests. They argue that a less engaged and influential USAID will create a vacuum that adversaries will readily fill. The downsizing of USAID marks a pivotal moment in the agency's history. Its impact will reverberate for years to come. The following sections delve deeper into the legal challenges, the consequences for global well-being, and the diverse reactions this move has elicited. The Trump administration's decision to downsize USAID did not go unchallenged. Unions representing USAID staff filed lawsuits to halt what they deemed a dismantling of the agency without congressional approval. They argued that the move was unconstitutional and would cause irreparable harm to USAID's mission and its employees. The legal battle highlighted the high stakes and the deep divisions surrounding the administration's actions. On February 7, 2025, a federal judge issued a ruling that paved the way for the administration to proceed with its staff reduction plan. This decision was a setback for the unions who had sought to block the move through the courts. However, they continued to fight, arguing that the administration had failed to demonstrate a rational basis for the drastic cuts. Despite the union's efforts, a judge lifted the temporary block on the downsizing plan on February 21, 2025. The judge's decision hinged on the union's inability to prove that their members would suffer irreparable harm. This ruling cleared the final legal hurdle for the administration, allowing them to proceed with the planned reduction in force. The legal challenges, though ultimately unsuccessful in halting the downsizing, underscore the controversial nature of the administration's decision. The court battles also brought to light the profound impact of the cuts on USAID's workforce and its ability to carry out its mission. While the legal battle has concluded, the debate surrounding the downsizing and its consequences is far from over. The downsizing of USAID has sent ripples across the globe, with profound implications for the agency's operations and its ability to deliver on its mission. The reduction in workforce and funding has significantly hindered the implementation and effectiveness of development programs across various sectors. These cuts come at a time when global challenges, from poverty and disease to climate change and conflict, demand greater international cooperation and assistance. One of the most immediate impacts of the downsizing has been the reduction in USAID's workforce from over 10,000 employees to a few hundred. This drastic reduction has resulted in a significant loss of expertise and institutional knowledge. The remaining staff are stretched thin, struggling to manage existing programs while facing the daunting task of absorbing the workload of their departed colleagues. The downsizing has also led to delays and disruptions in the delivery of humanitarian aid. USAID plays a critical role in responding to crises around the world, providing life-saving assistance to those affected by natural disasters, conflict, and famine. The reduced capacity of the agency raises concerns about its ability to respond effectively to future emergencies. This diminished capacity could have dire consequences for vulnerable populations who rely on USAID's assistance in times of need. The downsizing of USAID represents a significant setback for global development efforts. The agency has been instrumental in advancing U.S. foreign policy objectives by promoting economic growth, strengthening democratic institutions, and improving health outcomes in developing countries. The reduced footprint of USAID on the world stage raises concerns about the future of these programs and the people they aim to help. The downsizing of USAID has particularly severe consequences for global health programs. The agency has been at the forefront of the fight against infectious diseases, providing funding and technical assistance to countries around the world. The cuts to USAID's budget and personnel threaten to undermine decades of progress in improving global health outcomes. One of the most pressing concerns is the impact on programs combating diseases like HIV, AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis. USAID has been a major donor to the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, or PEPFAR, which has provided life-saving treatment to millions of people living with HIV/AIDS. The downsizing could jeopardize the gains made in the fight against this devastating epidemic. The cuts also threaten to reverse progress in combating malaria, a mosquito-borne disease that kills hundreds of thousands of people each year, mostly children in sub-Saharan Africa. USAID has played a critical role in providing insecticide-treated bed nets, indoor residual spraying, and access to effective anti-malarial drugs. The downsizing could lead to a resurgence of malaria in areas where the disease had been brought under control. The downsizing of USAID's health programs is a matter of grave concern. It undermines the agency's ability to respond to global health emergencies and threatens to erode the progress made in combating infectious diseases. The consequences of these cuts will be felt most acutely by the world's most vulnerable populations, who rely on USAID's health programs for their well-being. Section 5. Education and economic development progress stunted. The downsizing of USAID extends its impact beyond immediate health concerns, casting a long shadow on education and economic development initiatives globally. These programs, crucial for long-term stability and prosperity in developing nations, face an uncertain future with diminished support from the agency. USAID has played a pivotal role in promoting access to quality education, particularly for girls and marginalized communities. The agency's programs have supported teacher training, provided learning materials, and constructed schools in underserved areas. The downsizing threatens to disrupt these efforts, potentially depriving millions of children of the opportunity to receive a quality education. Furthermore, USAID has been instrumental in fostering economic growth and development through initiatives that support microfinance, promote entrepreneurship, and strengthen agricultural practices. These programs have helped to lift people out of poverty and create sustainable livelihoods. The downsizing will likely curtail these efforts, hindering economic progress and potentially exacerbating existing inequalities. The consequences of a diminished USAID presence in the realm of education and economic development are far-reaching. The agency's work in these areas is fundamental to breaking the cycle of poverty and building a more stable and prosperous future for developing countries. The downsizing threatens to undermine this progress, leaving a void that will be challenging to fill. Section 6. A world in crisis, humanitarian aid undermined. The downsizing of USAID comes at a time when the world is grappling with an unprecedented level of humanitarian need. From the ongoing conflict in Syria to the devastating famine in Yemen, millions of people are in dire need of assistance. The agency's reduced capacity to respond to these crises raises serious concerns about the well-being of vulnerable populations caught in the crossfire. USAID has been a leading provider of humanitarian aid, delivering life-saving assistance to those affected by natural disasters, conflict, and famine. The agency's ability to respond effectively to these crises is now in question, as the downsizing has significantly reduced its staff and resources. This diminished capacity could have dire consequences for those who rely on USAID's assistance in times of need. The downsizing has also raised concerns about the safety and security of remaining USAID staff, particularly those working in conflict zones and other high-risk environments. With fewer personnel on the ground, the agency's ability to provide adequate security for its staff is compromised, putting them at greater risk. This heightened risk could further hinder the agency's ability to deliver aid effectively. The downsizing of USAID represents a significant setback for global humanitarian efforts. As the world faces an increasing number of complex and protracted crises, the agency's reduced capacity to respond effectively is a cause for serious concern. The international community must find ways to fill the void left by USAID's diminished role in order to alleviate suffering and save lives. Section 7. International reactions, a chorus of concern and support. The downsizing of USAID has reverberated across the globe, eliciting a wide range of reactions from international development experts, humanitarian organizations, and foreign governments. While some voices have expressed support for the move, the overwhelming response has been one of concern and criticism. International development experts have been particularly critical of the downsizing, arguing that it undermines decades of progress in global development and weakens US leadership on the world stage. They argue that the cuts will have a devastating impact on the world's poorest and most vulnerable populations, who rely on USAID's assistance for their survival and well-being. Humanitarian organizations have also expressed alarm at the downsizing, warning that it will have dire consequences for their ability to respond to crises and deliver aid to those in need. They argue that the cuts will lead to increased suffering and loss of life, particularly in conflict zones and areas affected by natural disasters. While the majority of reactions to the downsizing have been negative, some voices have expressed support for the move. These supporters argue that it is necessary to reduce government spending and prioritize domestic issues. They contend that the US can no longer afford to be the world's sole provider of foreign aid, and that other countries need to step up and contribute more. The downsizing of USAID has sparked a global debate about the role of foreign aid in the 21st century. While there is no easy answer to this complex issue, the overwhelming response from the international community suggests that the downsizing is a step in the wrong direction. Section 8. The human cost, USAID staff, and their uncertain future. Beyond the geopolitical ramifications and the impact on aid programs, the downsizing of USAID carries a profound human cost. Thousands of dedicated professionals, many of whom have dedicated their careers to public service and advancing US foreign policy objectives, face an uncertain future. The emotional toll on these individuals and their families is immeasurable. The sudden job losses and forced administrative leave have left many USAID employees feeling betrayed and disillusioned. They have expressed frustration and anger at the way the downsizing was handled, citing a lack of transparency and communication from the administration. The uncertainty surrounding their futures has created anxiety and stress, making it difficult for them to focus on their work or plan for their family's well-being. Moreover, the downsizing has created a climate of fear and uncertainty within USAID. The remaining employees are left to grapple with heavier workloads, diminished resources, and the constant threat of further cuts. This environment is detrimental to morale and productivity, hindering the agency's ability to carry out its mission effectively. The human cost of the downsizing extends beyond the immediate impact on USAID employees. The loss of experienced and knowledgeable staff will have long-term consequences for the agency's institutional memory and its ability to recruit and retain top talent in the future. This brain drain could further weaken USAID's capacity to address global challenges effectively. Section 9. A legacy in jeopardy, the long-term implications. The downsizing of USAID represents a pivotal moment in the agency's history, one that could have far-reaching consequences for its legacy and the future of US leadership in global development. The agency, once a beacon of hope and a symbol of American generosity, now faces an uncertain future, its mission and values called into question. The long-term implications of the downsizing are multifaceted and complex. On a practical level, the cuts to USAID's budget and personnel will undoubtedly impact the agency's ability to deliver on its mission. This diminished capacity could lead to setbacks in global health, education, economic development, and humanitarian assistance, with potentially devastating consequences for the world's most vulnerable populations. More broadly, the downsizing of USAID signals a retreat from US global leadership. It sends a message to the world that the US is no longer committed to playing a leading role in addressing global challenges. This retreat creates a vacuum that other actors, some with less than altruistic intentions, may seek to fill. The downsizing of USAID is a gamble, a risky bet with potentially high stakes. Only time will tell what the long-term consequences of this decision will be. However, one thing is certain: the world is watching, and the legacy of USAID, once a source of pride for many Americans, hangs in the balance.